Hello and welcome to RDTV today. My name's Paul and we have a very exciting episode where we're looking at this F1 2019 by Codemasters on PC, set to release in the not too distant future, a little bit later this month, in time for the Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring. Formula 1 2019 is the next installment of the long-running and really rather popular Codemasters franchise of officially licensed Formula 1 games. In this video, one of many we are releasing over the next few days, we're going to have a real quick look at the opening screens and options in F1 2019 before taking to the track and giving you some thoughts on what we think the handling model, the sounds, the graphics and all that good stuff is like in the latest Formula 1 video game. But before we go any further, I'm going to get this. A mouse. There you go. Many people who play PC games will know all about what one of these are. This is a mouse that helps you navigate through the different screens within a game or on your computer. Sometimes you even use it for playing. You can steer with a mouse, you can move it around the screen and shoot things if you've got shooting games. This is a piece of equipment we do not need in Formula 1 2019 because sadly, once again, Codemasters have elected to not go with mouse support in the PC version of the game. Big disappointment, I hear you all inwardly groan watching this video. Yes, no mouse support in F1 2019. What does that mean? That means you navigate through the screens using your keyboard and predefined buttons on said keyboard, which in principle isn't a bad thing. But unfortunately we've gone down the magical mystery road, as always again in Codemasters Formula 1 games, of applying numbers to the many different buttons that you've got to choose from. You can see a little flashing icon. Am I going that way? The camera's reversed. Where it says Super License is button number 5. What's button number 5? I have no idea. On my steering wheel I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 buttons if you include the paddles, some of which are rotary dials and some are switches that have got multiple functions. I have no idea what button number 5 is, so again I'm stuck in that annoyingly frustrating world of not quite knowing what I need to press to get to where. Disappointing. It's 2019. I would have hoped we wouldn't have had to deal with this anymore, but alas, we do. So, never mind, without further ado, we'll move quickly on from that disappointment and have a look at the opening screen. So this is the launch screen of F1 2019. When you skip over the introductory video, immediately you'll notice it's quite heavily revised from earlier versions of the game, which is a refreshing change and I'm really pleased about. So it's quite nice. I do like the UI in the new title. It's quite intuitive, it's quite well put together, it's modern looking, it's clean. So down here we've got mail. This is where you'll get your various different messages from your game interaction in your online career mode. Calendar, the same sort of thing, so this will tell you what upcoming events you've got should you be playing a season or a career mode in the game. If we go to the options one, these options have been expanded slightly from the previous release. So controls, one of the most important ones and one of the often frustrating aspects of 2018 and prior. I'm using a Leo Bodner SimSteering version 2 direct drive wheel, and this comes, very grateful for this, with a default profile setup. So you can go in that, you can edit it, you can edit the different keys for acceleration, brake, all the usual stuff. You can do a bit of calibration to apply your dead zones and your how linear the various aspects of the wheel and the pedals are. Usual stuff, really good, really easy to use, and again found that really useful for my setup. The vibration and feedback settings I've left as standard and I've been very satisfied with what they're telling me through the wheel, but I'll come into that later in the video. And then the MFD shortcuts, which I've not yet set up in game. So really quite pleased with that one. I think the force feedback controls and the calibration and the button assignments that you've got are really quite solid, quite straightforward, not overkill, do the job nicely. audio and graphic settings. I'm not going to go through each and every one of those, but game options, yeah, top stuff, happy with those. Weekly event, now these are online set events for you to compete in. You've got a leaderboard, there's a few other reviewers obviously has set times in that at the moment. I've not gone to do that yet. They will refresh and change throughout the life of the game. Leagues we're not going to talk about because I've already posted an article at RaceDepartment.com straight from the horse's mouth, the Codemasters, on that one, so no point rehashing that again. And then some useful and interesting info about the FIA Formula 2 Championship that makes its debut in F1 2019, so we'll look at that a little bit later. And then you've got the news tile that you see here, so this takes you straight to the Codemasters website, tells you the latest news about the new game. So all good stuff. I'll find button F6 now and move over the top menu bar to solo. Here is where you can do a Grand Prix, you can race a custom championship, or you can start your racing career. And then multiplayer, they've got weekly events, they've got leagues, they've got online racing, as you would expect. Esports, so that's the whole esports side of Formula 1 2019, which is quite big, of course, because it runs alongside the FIA. And this is a brand spanking new bar. This is customization. So, for those of you that don't know, there is a 2019 regulation car designed in conjunction with Liberty Media and Ross Brawn that's in Formula 1 2019 that you can take online. It looks like a generic 2019 Grand Prix car. You can customize the livery, your driver, your suit, your sponsors, all that sort of thing. So it's a bit of an in-game editor, which is the first time we've seen that in the Formula 1 franchise. So that's really cool to see. Showroom, so you can look at the cars in all their visual glory, and then theatre, which is the replay loading and saving aspect. The replays are really cool in F1 2019. When you do a race, it then uploads what it deems to be your highlights and gives you like a short highlights reel of that event. So I think that's a really nice option. It should be really popular with video makers and YouTubers. But let's go solo first and foremost. Let's navigate towards Grand Prix. I did a little sound test earlier, so we've already got one set up, but we'll start again. And I just want to talk about visuals for a minute. This is a really, really cool screen. I love how they've done the transition from the 2019 cars, the array of classics in the game, and then Formula 2 from 2018 as well. So we'll quickly go on the classics because you already know who's in the 2018 season. So here we've got some new and returning favourites, which I'll just very quickly skim through while I'm talking. In the background you can see those on the screen behind me. So some of the cars from the 2018 game have been brought into this. Damon's Williams there. Load of nice content from throughout the history of Formula 1. This version I'm driving is the Legends edition, so it's heavily focused on Ed Senna and Alain Prost. Got a few of their cars in there as well. And then of course we've got Formula 2 for the very first time. Now Formula 2, it's the 2018 season at launch that you get within the game, and then Codemasters have promised that post-launch there will be an update to include the 2019 FIA Formula 2 season as well. And this is a really good, I'm going to do a separate video on Formula 2 a little bit later. That's a really cool inclusion. I'm really happy to see that Formula 2 cars are finally coming to a Formula 1 video game, and that adds something a little bit new. In the Formula 2 content, you can do a full championship using the tracks that Formula 2 run on. You can also do single races or championship races on the full Formula 1 grid. Championship even, let's use the right words. So if Formula 1 races at a track that Formula 2 doesn't, you can still drive the Formula 2 content in that context, which is really cool. It's nice to see that it's not been locked down by Codys to just the official cars and tracks, which is wonderful to see. And again, we will talk about Formula 2 in a separate video. They're a very different driving experience, very different altogether, so really cool to see that. Lance Stroll doesn't have big enough eyebrows in this because he has massive facial hair, so that's been disappointing. But all in, I'm impressed. I'm sorry, I've got a cold and I'm still struggling from having stopped up for 36 hours during the Le Mans 24-hour weekend, so apologies, not on form. But I'm impressed with the visuals of how they've refreshed and redone the introductory screens. Pierre Gasly in a Red Bull suit. Don't get used to that, because if he carries on driving like he's doing this year, he won't be in a Red Bull suit for much longer. But I'm impressed by the artistic side of F1 2019. I think they've done a really nice job putting it together. But that's enough of me waffling on about the menus. Let's do something important by going racing. So I'm going to pick a mid-grid team. Let's be Haas. Let's be Romain Grosjean. We'll go to, let's go to Canada, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, which at the time of recording it's the French Grand Prix weekend while I'm recording this, so it will have been the last Formula 1 race. Here, this is worth talking about actually, the weekend structure. You've got, in practice options, you can have a single session or the full practice as they do in the real life Formula 1, and a variety of different lengths for each session. Qualifying comes in one shot, short or full flavours, and then race distance. This is something that bugs me greatly. The options I have to choose from are 3 or 5 laps, or 25, 50 or 100%. Why I can't select the exact number of laps I wish to race is an annoyance to say the least, because 5 laps is no good to me, but on some tracks 25% is too long. I'd like to be able to choose. I find that a little bit disappointing, if I'm honest. To say we've got all the other weekend configurations, that's a frustration, but a mild irritant. I'm not quite sure why the design decision was taken for that, but hey ho, we'll move on. Gameplay settings, part firmware rules, damage, safety car, all the usual stuff. Assists, again, all the usual stuff. And then whether we can have dynamic, so we don't know what it's going to do in advance, or pre-baked weather conditions, or even customize it where you can change each, like in rFactor 2, change each portion of the race to have different weather. For this video, we're going to go with clear. Weekend structure. We're not going to have practice or quali, we're just going to go straight into the race. So, I'm going to blow my nose. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so gloves on, track is loading. There's been a refresher of the cutscenes when you're loaded into a track, which is much needed because they were getting dull in the extreme. So really nice visual way they've introduced the different Grand Prix.
To know it's finally race day. The atmosphere at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve is incredible. Personally, I think we're in for a brilliant race.
Me too, hopefully. So Crofty and Anthony Davidson, once again, you can skip through this, which is nice and refreshing, so you can skip straight to the race.
Braking suddenly into one. We could ruin our race if we hit them. Good luck.
I'm Romain Grosjean in this race, so I will guarantee to ruin my race in turn 1, but let's get going. So, engage clutch, reach optimal revs with P12 on the grid, which is realistic. And we bogged down massively off the start. Terrible start, not enough accelerator, too much caution. Early brake locking the fronts a little bit. Immediately you'll notice the game is visually quite different from F1 2018, its predecessor. There's been quite a bit of work on the lighting, there's quite a bit of work on the visuals by Codemasters, and it shines through really nicely. I've not quite got this on my PC version up to 100% top settings, but it's not a million miles away, and it runs really nicely. I've locked the FPS to 60, although I'm getting much higher FPS than that when playing in reality, but for the benefit of this stream I just want to make it a little bit smooth enough for me to be able to go about and do my business, talk to you guys, and not fall under too much pressure in terms of the computer performance. So the performance was really quite good. It's a little bit graphics heavy, it's a graphically advanced title, so it is a little bit weighty on the machine, so you have to have a decent machine to run high settings, but all things considered, it's visually quite pleasing, as I've managed to drop right to the back of the grid on the opening lap, which is a bit disappointing, but quite typical for Romain Grosjean, I suppose. Now, other things that we've got that are noticeable from a visual point of view, and you don't need me to point them out to you, you can see them on the screen behind me. There's a lot more things like debris and leaves and whatnot, and various bits of dust and sparks and all that good stuff flying up as you drive around. So visually, I think Codis are in a really good place with Formula 1 2018. I think it does look nice. They've got a nice balance and trade-off between blingy visually bits, a gritty realism to it all, and still quite solid as I completely monster that curb. Quite solid performance too. I'm running a single screen. I've downscaled to 1980 by 1920 by 1080 or whatever the standard thing is, just for the output of the YouTube exporting. But even when I run it the full size, I've got a 49-inch curved gaming monitor. Even when I run it full screen, it looks and runs really well. So I've got no complaints from a performance point of view, even on high settings with a i9 and a CPU and a 980 TX. Sorry. DRS is now available. Just be quiet for a second then so I can hear that message. A 980 Ti graphics card. So yeah, really pleased with the performance. I've always been pretty decent in terms of performance with F1 games before, but I was expecting prior to playing this a bit of a hit with having, as Codemasters call, enhanced graphics over previous releases, but they seem to have balanced that out quite nicely actually, so I'm satisfied about that as I forget. So I'm talking too loud, I can't hear my DRS beep. I forget to put DRS on. There's 3 DRS zones here at Canada, so a lot of the fake cheating pass button opportunities to press. If memory serves me correctly, there's another one as you get away from the acceleration zone of the hairpin. So I would quite like either a more prominent DRS warning or a visual on screen as well would be really nice. Talking about visuals for a second, if you're worried about seeing the large halo in front of you, this can be turned off in the game options. I like to keep it on for authenticity purposes, but if it bugs you or you find it's too much of a negative detraction from the game, you can turn it off in the options, so don't worry too much about that. Very difficult when not playing in VR to see around the halo, because obviously you're looking on a flat screen, which again there's no VR support sadly in this game, despite the community being quite vocal about wanting to have it included during the development phase. Hopefully Codemasters will start to realise the benefit of VR in the near future and bring it to the Formula 1 franchise, because I think this game with VR could be quite awesome, ladies and gentlemen. I do say so myself. I like VR, I'm a fan of it, and I think in a Formula 1 environment that could be a really good thing. I've got no idea where activation zones are, so I'm going to struggle to keep up with these guys in front. But never mind. A lesson learned for the next video. I'll find a way of turning that on a little bit louder for a future video. So that's the visual side of things. I think they've done a nice job. I think the models of the cars look really good. I think the graphics on the tracks and the various bring it to life aspects of it are really strong. And I like that. It's a good improvement over the last games. I've got an Alfa, face full of Alfa Romeo here. We go a little bit risky at the inside. Got damage on, so I need to give him a respectful amount of distance. We don't want to make contact, otherwise that could be the end of our merry adventure. We'll go to cover as well into the next chicane. Let's not do a Sebastian Vettel and run wide, but we've avoided it, so we're okay. Now I want to talk about the thing that probably the majority of you are most interested in, and that's force feedback. Now I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I'm running a Leo Bodner sim steering version 2 wheel, which is quite a high-end direct drive steering wheel, and it gives me some absolutely fantastico results in other racing sims or more traditional racing sims. In R Factor 2 in particular, it's fabulous.
We're approaching the pit window. You'll be on the mediums.
Oh damn, pit window, I've not done a pit stop in this yet. This could be Larry. There is a default profile for the Sim Steering V2, so I've not adjusted anything either in my wheel controller properties or in-game. I'm running bone stock, so I dare say with a little bit of tweaking and playing you could get a better experience, but I'm really satisfied with the way the force feedback behaves. It's an improvement over F1 2018, and I thought F1 2018 was quite a big improvement over previous games within the franchise, so I'm satisfied. It's not formal, it's not R Factor 2 or Assetto Corsa or Assetto Corsa Competizione, Automobilista, name your racing sim of choice. It's not to that level of force feedback fidelity, absolutely not, but it's not that kind of game either. It's very, very, very serviceable for what the Formula 1 franchise is trying to be, especially on a direct drive wheel, which I'm sporting for this video. I'm more than satisfied. A Formula 1 car by its very nature, it's high downforce, it's very modern, aerodynamically driven, got big, thick, slick tyres. It's not a talkative car, particularly. It is quite point and square, because that's the nature of the vehicle in question. So you don't need 1000% worth of detail and feeling every bump in the road in order to be able to drive it, get on top of it, to get under its skin. And what Codemasters have done, they've stepped it up yet further from the 2018 version, so the weight comes in and goes away at the right times. It feels like there's a little bit more fidelity in the understeer aspects of the game, so I'm getting different sensations than I got from 2018 when I'm going past the point of front end grip. It feels like I can feel the front tyres sliding a little bit more than I could in the previous title, which is a welcome addition to the force feedback feeling in Sim. I'm happy about that. It makes a nice difference that I shift out of the way a little bit to be able to see the corner because of the halo. Get a little bit too much sausage curve, but we get away with it. Put some DRS on. So the understeer aspect seems to have been stepped up.
We're gonna box this lap. Push hard on the in-lap.
Box this lap. Box, 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 as they say in Formula 1. This will be Larry. This will be the first time I've ever tried to do a pit stop. I didn't realise pit stops would be enabled. Oh dear. So this could go all Pete Tong. So enjoy seeing cars in the distance for the last time, because I'm probably going to drop some way away from the chase, well, the pack in front. So yeah, force feedback. I'm quite pleased with it. I can feel what the rear end of the car is doing. I can feel the slides when they're starting to come in and do something about it to correct them. So that's, again, really satisfying. The rear end traction loss.
The speed limit will be penalised if we exceed it.
Thank you.
Keep that in mind as you approach.
I will indeed. The rear end traction loss feels very similar to it as it did in Formula 1 2018. I think the most noticeable difference for people who've got both games will most certainly be the understeer or enhanced understeer effects that have been brought in. As I get down to the speed limit, just concentrate. Computer takes over now, because I've set it for the computer to take over. You can manually box as well if you so wish, but I've elected not to do that on this occasion. So
Go, go, go.
away we go again. That wasn't too bad actually. Yeah, it's the understeer where I think you're going to find the biggest difference. You're going to notice things more than you did in F1 2018, sorry. Right, just seeing when do I take control again. There we go. Away we go. Pit stop successful, and we've made no places up. And dropped a little bit of time as well, somehow. Anyway, not to worry. Let's push a bit now. Where would I rank force feedback in relation to other racing sims? This is a difficult question. I'll tell you why it's a difficult question. Because this is not a simulator, a true simulator, in the strictest sense of the word. So this is not trying to rival, I will use R Factor 2 as an example, which I personally feel is one of the strongest sim-orientated racing games out there at the moment. It's not trying to rival the experience that you get with the Formula 1 content in R Factor 2. It's a more accessible game, dare I say Simcade title. I hate using labels for things, but it's accessible, it's available on console, it's available on PC, and the idea is to simulate the world of Formula 1, but in a way that people of different skills and tastes can become involved in the title itself. So with that in mind, as I run a little bit wide and lock my inside front tyre, with that in mind, I think Formula 1 and Codemasters have got a really nice positioning in the market, and I said this after the last game. It's not super duper detailed, but it's not dumbed down either. I would consider myself absolutely and categorically somebody who likes the hardcore sim end of the spectrum. Very much so. The more realistic and more difficult the game is, the happier I am. But I can still get a really enjoyable experience from F1 2018 and now F1 2019. Oh, lost the back end there, but I can feel it coming round, so do something about it. I can still get a really enjoyable experience. It does a great job of simulating the everything that's involved about being a Formula 1 driver. There's some new physics dimensions in 2019 around the tyres. So for this iteration of the franchise, they're simulating the tyre temperature on both the carcass and the tread. So by that, there are different levels of degradation and wear and lifespan to the tyres that wasn't previously available in 2018. And this again adds another strategic aspect to driving the car. Formula 1 in modern times uses Pirelli tyres, and by their own design, they're designed not to last flat chat for a full race distance. So you've got to really be careful with the temperatures of the tyres. If you're doing the outer tyre temperature, you can overcook it and then bring the tyres back to life again. But if you're doing the carcass, that's basically the core of the tyre itself. If you get that outside of the operating window, you can't get it back, and you basically ruined that set of tyres. And there's a weekend allocation, as I understand massively, just to avoid the outer wall. There's a proper weekend allocation of tyres as well, so you can pick how many sets of hard, medium and softs you want for any given race weekend. So you've got to manage that over the course of the practice, qualifying and race sessions as well, just like the real life. So there's a lot of really cool aspects towards the car management side of things that have been expanded upon in F1 2019. I'm driving that bad, I'm behind a Williams, and I like that, and that adds just yet again another aspect to the title that appeals more to those of us looking for a more simulation orientated experience. I suggested at the beginning of this video that F1 2019 is maybe aimed at a broader cross-section of the racing game marketplace than something like Formula 1, something like R Factor 2, let's say. But I will say this, to me, feels like the most simulation orientated Formula 1 game that Codemasters have made so far. And that's a good thing, because I think they do it in a sympathetic way that makes it appealing to the likes of me and potentially you guys watching at home that like the hardcore aspect, but doesn't scare away the casual gamer as well. It's bravo to Codemasters. I do think they're now starting to find their feet in terms of what they want to be with this franchise, and they're starting to really play to those strengths and maximise what they intend to be. So well done to Codemasters. You've built a game basically that can be accessible for people that are not necessarily sim racing fans, that I dare say want to play with a pad in front of the television, on the sofa, on their Xbox or the PlayStation, but also people like me that have got ridiculous amounts of hardware and want a thorough Grand Prix experience. I can also get some satisfaction out of this game as well. pretty cool. Force feedback's believable, I'm comfortable with it, I understand what it's doing, I'm quite satisfied with it. It's not game-changingly good, but it's definitely not distracting from the enjoyment I get from the title, not by any stretch of the imagination. The graphics are, in my opinion, playing it on almost top settings but not quite, the graphics are the best they've ever been in the Formula 1 franchise. They look the bee's knees. I think I really like the graphical artistic license that Codemasters have used within the game. I'll do a video in wet conditions a little bit later on to give you an insight into what that looks like, but it looks wicked. Wet weather in F1 2019 is a real step up over 2018, and it was good. It was good in 2018 in my opinion as well, so yeah, wet weather looks the business, most definitely. Audio, they've done a really good job with the awful material that they've got to work with. A modern hybrid Formula 1 car is not a pleasant audio experience in my opinion, and I think they've done a nice job with what they've done. I'll shut up for a moment and let you have a listen to that one. Really nice. I really like the overrun sort of noise as you're going down the gears as well, and you're off throttle. Really nice. Really nice audio job Codemasters have done. Once again, you can hear the wind when you're picking up speed, you can hear the crowd at particularly crowded parts of the circuit. So if you're going through, say, the stadium section at Mexico, you can hear the crowd cheering you along as well. So they've always been good, let's be honest. Codemasters have always been pretty good in the audio department. Dirt Rally 2.0 in particular, I think sounds fabulous. So yeah, coders have done a really solid job in that regard with Formula 1 2019. As I get a little bit leery on the throttle, a couple of the inside wheels on the curb as well, which destabilises the car. Plus I've got old tyres, tyre wears scaled to the race distance, so we're running an old set of boots now. We're starting to run out of grip, heading into the final lap or two of the race. Well, that's a fuel too, so we're running low on the old go-go juice. So all in, my first impressions, this is not a review by the way, this is just an impressions video, the limited driving I've done so far, just to give you a little bit of insight into what the game is like prior to release. There'll be plenty more videos coming on our Twitch and RaceDepartment Twitch and YouTube channel, so do give us a like and a subscribe there please, that would mean the world to us. Would appreciate that one greatly, thank you very much. First impressions are very, very solid indeed. I like it. I think it's a step up from 2018. 2018 itself was a step up from 2017, as was a step up from 2016, so Codemasters are going in the right direction with this franchise, for sure. How much of a step up is it over the previous game? I think if we keep that decision to purely the Formula 1 content, you've got a visual uplift. A significant, in my opinion, visual uplift over the last game, that's for sure. The force feedback feels better, it's a step improvement, it's not night and day, it's not a totally different experience. I think those of us familiar, woohoo, nearly, those of us familiar with F1 2018 will definitely feel the resemblance in 2019, but they've made incremental improvements in the areas that matter, including usability. So force feedback is better for sure, graphics as we say are better, audio's as good as the last game. So if you're looking at just the Formula 1 content, it's obviously got the new cars, teams, driver combinations and all that good stuff. There's no new circuits for 2019, so no new tracks to try, although they're in effect new tracks in the game environment because of the visual improvements that have been brought to it. But yeah, it's a step up, a small step up to a lesser or greater degree in many different respects than the previous game. Is it worth 45 of your hard-earned English pounds?
Gap to car in
Depends on
front
what
is
you're looking for.
15.8 seconds.
I will caveat that by F1 2019, of course, now has Formula 2 content, and that's got a monetary value all on its own. I personally am a fan of most forms of motorsport, so I would pay for a standalone Formula 2 game. So to have currently the 2018 cars, in future to have the 2019 cars included for free, yeah, I do think it's worth the money, even if you own F1 2018 already. It's a very, very solid game. It's a very Codemasters game. I've encountered a couple. I've got a review copy, bear in mind, so there's still a little bit of time until the game hits the public domain. I've encountered a couple of game crashes, which have been a little bit frustrating. I've had some difficulties getting the thing configured to record in OBS, but they've been overcome now with a few tweaks and changes. There we go. But all in, I think it's very, very solid. I like it. My first impressions are overwhelmingly positive. I've had, not in this video because I'm talking and not really concentrating, so I've been dropped quite considerably by the AI, but I've had some decent AI battles. I think they do a pretty solid job. It's on a par for me so far from what I've seen with F1 2018 in terms of the AI behaviour against a human. I tried Monza and the difficulties of T1. Got a parked Sauber at the side of the track there into retirement. So we had a few difficulties in T1, people getting up my inside where I don't necessarily think it's appropriate for them to do that, but all in, yeah, it's a really solid experience throughout. We've not released yet, so we've got no comparison to what the online aspect's like, but from an offline version, from a content depth and from an enjoyment factor, yeah, really pleased with it. Computer takes over, P19, we've been hammered, but let's see what David Croft and Anthony Davidson have got to say.
So Mercedes have won it, and what a great race it was.
David Croft wooden, as always, in this.
I think that smart tyre management on track and very smooth driving definitely assisted in their victory today. That combination meant they got the absolute maximum out of their tyres at all times.
After an excellent performance in the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it.
So some slight tweaks to the audio and the cutscenes compared to previous versions. There was a little bit of rinse and repeat over historic entries into the franchise, so there's been a much needed little refresh going on there in some parts, which adds a little bit more freshness into the title compared to 2018 versus 2017. And that's it, folks.
The driver of the day, Anthony Davidson. Who do you pick?
Who's the driver of the day?
My standout today. Nothing you could construe as showboating, just an incredibly consistent performance out on track.
Kimi Raikkonen P13. Don't think I'd have to agree with that, Ant.
Thanks to everyone who joined us.
Thank you, David.
We'll see you for the next one.
Well, indeed. So there you go. That's my first look at Formula 1 2019 by Codemasters. All in, really enjoying myself. Don't think it breaks any kind of barriers down in the genre. There's nothing that you step into and go, whoa, that's amazing. But there's nothing that raises any red flags either. A very solid and incremental increase in improvements across the board over 2018. And 2018 was, in my opinion at least, a very solid entry into the series. So, the biggest thing I can say about this is, have I had fun? Yes, definitely. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to making you some more videos over the course of the next few days, so stay tuned to Race Department on Twitch and on YouTube. Please do give us a like and a sub, that would mean a lot to me. Follow us on social media, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, RaceDepartment.com and YouTube and Twitch. As I've said, we've got a podcast. Enjoy some of that action. Search Race Department at your podcast provider of choice. And that's it. I've been Paul. This has been RDTV. We've been